Hey, so I wanted to do a video on energy because I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Um, Mainly like looking at solar panels, supply chain logistics, predicted energy outages due to extreme weather, and prices due to increasing environmentalism, which is a good thing on a political. Is look, we're not going to get change in any sector without some level of disruption. It's just not going to happen. People aren't going to go buy a new thing unless the old thing stops giving them what they want. And we need to build new energy sources, whether that's new age nuclear or whether that's some sort of diffuse um, power starved kind of ecological techno agrarian society. Like it's possible we could be Amish with cell phones and enough solar to power our kind of high tech electronics, but not enough real energy to power motors that would be required for farming and stuff like that. So we could have a techno agrarian society that's just low power requirements and go off of wind and solar. But if we're going to have kind of a mechanized world, it's going to take more than that. But I get on these things. This is why I am kind of my brain works different. I think it's a good thing, but it is what it is. So I was on this thing with the batteries, and the batteries turned into, well, I should get some solar panels to charge them. And I was like, well, if I got the batteries and I got the solar panels, I might as well start planning for an off-grid setup. And then I was like, well, the grid-tied inverters aren't that expensive, actually. And I could have just a grid-tied thing, and then I could have a plug-in battery charger like I was gonna have. And then I circled all the way back to simply buying my electricity from renewable bundled generation packages. And this is what I actually ended up doing. Instead of opening the psychological and economic and liability laden bag of worms called installing a power plant somewhere in your house, whether that be wind, solar, or whatever. It's a project, and there are legitimate safety concerns. There's structural changes. There's logistics and expenses and fire risk liability, and you got to be up to code. And these DIY systems, it has to, if it does it, it's got to be done right, and it's got to, if it's going to have any capacity. And the benefit to it is, well, I could be off grid and have my own power source if there was a interruption of power. And I like the idea of being green, of not getting my electricity from coal, and even gas if I can avoid it. Although I've talked about gas in the past, and I don't think it's that bad. I think methane in the atmosphere is terrible, but I don't think burning methane and producing carbon dioxide, if that's all anybody used, I don't think we'd be in a whole lot of trouble. We'd be converting methane gas into carbon dioxide gas. I think our planet might be able to tolerate that if we didn't have coal and oil, really. Because it's a greenhouse gas unto itself that's lighter than gas naturally occurring. It's not to say that we're capturing what would have ended up in our atmosphere anyway and burning that, which is not the case. But I do think that our kind of biosphere, even with this population, could tolerate a natural gas powered world. It's my guess. It's too late now, but I don't think natural gas is that bad. The end decision was to have the energy security from impending price volatility with a long-term contract that basically it's like a finance company, really. What it does is I buy energy from the grid, essentially, through a third party conglomerate company, whatever, and then that third party company buys what they call RECs, which are renewable energy credits, equivalent to like 1 megawatt of electricity, from the energy market. And this is where my comfort and convenience requires me to trust society. It does. I've truly believed that the majority of truly green power has to be industrial scale. I don't believe that, although my mind is slowly being changed when I'm seeing some of these prices, and I don't truly believe that solar panels on a residential scale over the life of the system are truly that green. Now, like I said, my mind's slowly changing when I'm seeing, okay, you got 80% output after 25 years of service, and what my mind's been ultimately changed to is, in a best case scenario, residential solar panels do the job, and they are. I don't think they're perfectly green because of the mining and the manufacturing and the energy involved in transport and installation and ultimately their disposal. And the diffuse power. There's problems with solar that make it not particularly rational for an energy policy on an industrial scale. In some sort of socioeconomic environment where, again, you're not using that much energy because you are either not doing that much work, or the work that you're doing is mostly physical. In that environment, they do provide the power and serve their purpose, but basically you're not going to run any city off of solar. You're not going to run any manufacturing plant off of solar. You could run a house off of solar, and with batteries and the right upkeep, you could run a house completely separated from the system off of solar. The problem is none of it is green, cheap, or easy. Battery technology, battery recycling is rapidly improving. It's a difficult time to justify investing in that on a real asset scale, because while the batteries I can afford are toxic and dangerous, on different levels, the batteries of the future promise to be less so. And if anything in this world is getting cheaper year on year, it is battery technology and it is solar technology. These things are getting cheaper. So the real benefit to being off grid and being green is what was like, maybe I should start planning for solar panels. I can hedge against energy costs going up in the future, etc., etc. But I started to shop around and I decided, okay, I'm going to buy this contract, locks in my generation rate, which is my cost of electricity, not counting what they charge me for carrying it to my house in buckets. But they do upkeep and they do repairs, so there's a lot asked of Eversource, which is our local energy provider. So they deserve their money. So, but I'm paying, when it's all said and done, it's going to be roughly 10% more in my electric bill, which isn't bad. I only pay, roughly like 110 to 150. Actually, I would say maybe less than that. I would say 85 to 150. It's kind of my minimum, maximum electrical bills a month. So I'll be paying total about 10% more, maybe 12% more a month. But that price will be locked in for 2 years. And while I was surprised I could pay less, the energy program I'm buying into, where they're buying these renewable energy credits, which I'm trusting that they will do, and I'm trusting that those renewable energy credits are going to be invested wisely in energy technology of the future. And I'm sure they won't. That's the catch. It goes to, well, we bought it from a wind farm, which is good, or we bought it from a solar farm. Okay, so you're giving money to that guy who made that investment, but it might not necessarily go to building another solar farm, or it might not go to building another wind farm, or better yet, it definitely won't go to building a nuclear power plant, especially a next generation nuclear power plant. So it's not like good. It's bare minimum. But it's better than taking in a 20% cut in my electric bill and getting my coal electricity, And as far as being off grid, like, I'm going to be grid tied for 2 years. In that 2 years, I think we will see if there is a future. 2 years from now, I think we're going to see short term and maybe even medium term. It might be 3-4 years. But if there is a future, I'm not, tomorrow's not promised. I do think if anything's going to be cheaper and higher quality, it's going to be at-home energy generation and storage. I think those technologies will improve, and we'll also have a better understanding of how the environment's changing. So I might be looking right now at these solar panels, like, you can get a solar panel right now, $80 for a 100-watt panel. $80 for a 100-watt panel is almost cheaper generation than coal. It's not expensive. When you get into the batteries, the storage, the line loss, it can add up. You're certainly not going to get all of that in generation, and you're going to have additional expense, and you get my point. But it's not expensive. But we could see in my area, which is not very windy, wind go up like crazy. We could have a volcano. We could have something, and whatever. The panels could get damaged. It could start a fire and damage my house. So there's a lot of things to consider. But the decision that I ultimately made was to do a 2-year electrical energy contract, and if need be, I'll shut off my gas furnace. I'll only use my gas hot water heater if the price of gas goes through the roof, and I can get my heat from my heat pump, and I will have locked in energy prices for at least 2 years. Additionally, I can buy some cheap batteries. I'm going to store them far away from where I sleep in the basement, but I'll get some lead acid ones because I'm reading up on them. They apparently leak out fumes. You don't want to breathe in the fumes from these batteries. So I'm going to find a nice quiet location, maybe put in a little ventilation, nothing crazy, but or seal it up. But and get that taken care of, and I'll be charging it off of the grid, but my meter will be used to purchase these credits. So it'll be like I'm charging it off a solar panel, just not my solar panel. So I'll have energy storage, and then in a pinch, if I lose electricity, I recharge it off my generator. I still have a clear conscience. It's not like it's too much, but I don't need more than the capacity to be off grid at this point for more than a week, with how I view my current kind of threat level, which is mostly like getting hit by a major storm and losing power. But if I can stay electrified for a week, that's it. I don't need to be planning for permanent off-grid living. At this point, it doesn't make sense. So, but my concern over volatility in the energy market is real. I really am like, okay, if we're seeing the prices of natural gas double, we're seeing, and we will see continued pressure put on major polluters, including natural gas, and forcing them to fix their leaks, and you get it. There's gonna be some sort of cap and trade, and the companies that are going to be polluting. This is where the market I'm now participating in are going to be kind of manipulating the system. Other people, this is where the cap and trade will work. So these, in the energy market, there'll be a limit to how many carbon emissions, how many gigatons of carbon you could emit. And then above that, you're going to have to pay a fine. And if you want to offset that carbon fine, you'll have to buy these credits, right? But it's a system where you could see the potential right from the get-go for corruption and exploitation. You could see it right from the get-go. And I'm sure that's the real problem, because who's generating these financial instruments that represent real energy in the market, and how's that money going to be reinvested, and are they being just generated by the government based on these installations that have already happened? Are they generated proactively to raise capital for future projects? I don't know. I honestly don't. I tried to do a little bit of research before I signed the contract, but ultimately I was like, look, I use uh, roughly like 5 kilowatt hours a day. If I were to install a good solar system, that would cover myself. I would probably have to spend at least like $2,500. I don't have it. And to do like a piecemeal system, you got to make a decision about voltages, and it's just too much. It's just too much, and the technology is changing too quickly. And I feel like I'm buying this generation's best batteries are next year's trash. And last year's trash that's about to be like obsolete is like probably where it's at as far as batteries go, not having to worry about weight. But when I look to the future, I'm like, batteries could be so cheap, so cheap. If we go through whatever we go through and come out the other end, that's what that's where the big investment's being made. Battery technology, battery manufacturing, um, and a lot of these solar panels are, well, they're currently expensive, or seeing some not expensive, currently cheap, but they're currently seeing some manufacturing issues, I think, from Chinese wholesalers, and we certainly could see that get worse. I don't think that it'll get worse in the long term. Again, if there is a future, 2, 3 years from now, it's hard to imagine solar panels specifically being inflation relative more expensive than they are today. I think they'll be significantly cheaper than they are today. And, that's maybe the one area where I do think that's the case, because they pump out so many of these things now. They're getting to the point where they're like printing them literally, and that's deflationary because they are definitely a machine that refines its own process, So, like I said, if there is a future, the two things that could potentially be cheaper are batteries and solar panels. And solar panels might be the poor decision because with a rapidly changing environment, 2 years from now, a wind turbine might make a whole lot more sense than a solar panel. Right now, a solar panel makes a whole lot more sense. Not because of ease installation, not because of power generation or anything like that. Just because I don't have a lot of wind and I have okay sun. But 2 years from now, we could see crazy sustained winds here, 20 miles an hour most of the time. I don't know. That's what a changing environment is. It's difficult to predict the future based on the past. So I think having a 2-year wait and see personal energy policy, 2 years of trying to be as green as possible while making as little material investment as possible. Besides some battery backups and a gasoline generator, that's it. I want to be 12 hours of quiet battery storage, and then the capacity to recharge those batteries hundreds and hundreds of times if necessary, with a gasoline generator. And that should be all I need. 2 years from now, I think we'll have a whole lot better idea about whether or not at-home generation will be required for personal security. At this point, I'm making the decision that I don't need to plan for off-grid in the next 2 years. I think that the grid will either last 2 years or it doesn't matter. So, decisions made. I'm going to have probably 200 amp hours when it's all said and done, maybe 230 amp hours of lead acid battery storage, power my refrigerator, gas furnace, gas water heater, and television for the night, and then recharge it as needed to get through any week or even possibly month-long power outages. And then 2 years from now, I will reassess the finances and safety of going off-grid in the suburbs. I think that's the right decision, and I don't have to worry about. I could dive into it and find the corruption, find the futility of it all, I'm sure, in this energy credit program, green energy credit program. But I'm going to say that in any of these green energy investments, the downside is often minimalized. I've said for a while, go nuclear or go extinct. And not just nuclear, it needs to be next generation nuclear, whether that's medium temperature fusion, which is now going to be a thing, or high temperature fission, like the helium reactors, then molten salt. I don't care. Can remediate the waste in other products that are also on the market. So, let the governments do what the governments are going to do. But I know energy well enough to know that we need to do something, and it's either going to fall on individuals for survival, and I hate to say it, like last day's comforts. You know what I mean? Because if things are getting really bad, solar panels aren't going to keep you alive. Solar panels will keep your children watching Disney movies while the Category 6 hurricane, the 10th one this year, bombards the U.S. and destroys our infrastructure. Destroys not just power lines, but power plants. Weather events that cripple states with such rapid succession. There's no time to rebuild. That's what solar panels do if you're lucky enough to not be in the direct line of fire. And if you are in the direct line of fire, say goodbye to that investment. You know what I mean? Because you're going to be suffering in third world conditions with everyone else. So that's what I'm thinking about: emergency power supply and at-home generation and solar panels. I'm not thinking solar panels are enough to save the world. I don't think they are. I think that solar panels are enough if your house isn't destroyed by the massive onslaught of extreme weather events, then you'll have a stable power supply. That stable power supply won't be enough to power industry or power a farm or power your car, but it will be enough to have some kind of medial creature comforts. Your refrigerator stays running, You have hot water, things like that. So I'm going to hold off for 2 years, and I'm going to just see how this thing goes. And in 2 years, hopefully my financial situation is improved, the technology is improved, safety profiles improved, both the environmental risks that some of this equipment has, its durability, and also my ability to predict the future and where and what is safest and the best investment. I wish that I could direct my effort towards energy sources that I want. That's to me what a free market is. It says, okay, you're pumping X, amount of energy, like our local nuclear power plant is called Millstone. I should be able to buy my electricity from Millstone. I can't. That is not a free market. Millstone sells their electricity primarily to our local energy company, which is the Eversource, and then the other 50%, it goes to third-party conglomerates which sell contracts. And that energy, I think it's like 3 cents a kilowatt hour or something like that, 2 cents a kilowatt hour, is sold in packages that count towards the 11 or 12. I think actually I'm doing 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's roughly 7 times cheaper to buy nuclear power electricity than it is to buy green power from these packages. But that 2 or 3 cent kilowatt hour nuclear electricity is basically supporting those packages, because the solar power coming from some of these solar farms is not, it's let's say 10 cents a kilowatt hour, their cost over the life of the system. I don't know if that's true, but I know it's significantly more expensive, especially with these older panels, than the cost of nuclear power. And it was a big deal when they made that. I felt that was another kind of corrupt thing. We got deregulation, which says, oh, you're allowed to pick your energy provider. No, we're allowed to pick from energy retailers, not electrical generators. The generators don't sell directly to the consumer, and we have to pay the middleman. And then they weren't even allowed to make their own package, right? So the logical thing would be for Millstone to say, okay, we're going to make a separate company that's a retail electrical provider, and we're going to sell our electricity through that secondary company. They made some sort of backdoor deal. I remember it happened years ago, and they threatened to go out of business, and they made some shady deal. And the garbage part about that is, for the free market system to work, and it's too late. The free market system is too late. Can't work. But if it were to work, this is how it would. The consumer says, ooh, I want not just green energy, I want the cheapest energy available. I'm going to buy directly from Millstone. Millstone sells electricity to the consumer at 3-5 cents. Let's say they sell it at 7 cents a kilowatt hour. So they're selling at 100% markup, more than that. And and that's relative to what they're selling in the wholesale market. So 100% markup from their wholesale price, right? So that's not their cost of doing business price. That's the price that they're currently selling at. 100% markup from that. And they the consumer who's buying the product that they want is flooding money into the sector that, if it were to blossom, would provide that for more and more people at increasingly lower and lower costs. Because more people in, more people thinking about it, more people working on it, more systems get improved in efficiency over time. It's just how it works. So it doesn't. We don't get to do that. That competitive advantage over the long term that should be given to the best product on the market, which is nuclear. The best product for energy on the market is nuclear. Nuclear, ergo, should have the free market's competitive advantage of being able to underprice their competitors. Well, the rest of the green energy sector didn't want their prices undercut. It would destroy. This is where it got shady. If you could buy 3 cents a kilowatt hour carbon free electricity, why would you buy solar at 14 cents a kilowatt hour through a third party provider? You wouldn't. It would be even somebody with a good heart who's saying, I want to do the right thing for the environment, would still buy the 3 cents an hour because it's a fraction of the price, or even if it's half the price. So they literally would have destroyed the whole green energy marketplace that they were trying to create. And they were then granted, because of that, green energy status, which allowed them to sell in the conglomerates, the third-party companies that are putting together these financial packages to sell as long-term contracts to the free market energy sector. They were allowed to join that, but they, in exchange for that, they wanted, in order to have like a no compete, they said, okay, but we need all the green energy credits. So they are getting all the green energy credits, and then they're selling into a marketplace that's, their competitors aren't their competitors. They're not competing. They have a no compete contract with wind and solar, and that's what the nuclear energy sector did to the consumer. And because of that, they got a bunch of stimulus from the government in the form of green energy credits. Now, they shot that. I mean, that's, capitalism is cruel, right? Capitalism says the best should win, and the best was nuclear, and nuclear didn't win because nuclear didn't want to win. But nuclear, it's through the government, and it's through, so we have this, it's not a free market system, it's deregulated, but it's so corrupt. But what can you do? I can't build a nuclear power plant. I can't build a medium temperature plasma. I could get a couple arc welders together and maybe throw some dust at it, see what happens after 45 minutes in a vacuum, but it probably wouldn't work. Anyway, basically where I'm at is I've made the decision to kind of lock in my energy prices fixed rate for 2 years from now, and I'm not going to pay any more than about 12% more than I'm paying today. And I feel like that's a good move. all around. I feel while I'm not doing everything I know needs to be done, nowhere close to it. Excuse me, which makes me sick and also burp apparently. But I'm doing a reasonable amount within my limitations, which is that of a human being in America with limited finances. I'm paying extra to get the financial machinery that's been set up by what I consider to be bad people who do bad things for the wrong reasons. They set up this little game to appease me during what is probably the apocalypse. I'm going to play the game because it's all I can do, you know. But I'm buying the green energy package. Millstone will see a portion of that, and oh yeah, the 50%. So Millstone sells 50%, and I think that accounts for like 99% of Connecticut's green energy. So Connecticut has 33% green energy, and I think 99% of that is that Millstone. So they got the good press of getting to say they're 33% green energy by bribe. I don't know. It's a whole thing, but we should be allowed to buy our energy from the source and to do so at the most competitive price. And that way, the most competitive source would profit the most. More people would invest in that sector because it's seeing all the customers, and that sector would grow and see improved efficiencies and improvements in technologies with that improved investment. Again, it's too late, but that's the way capitalism should have worked. So that's the game I'm gonna play. It's the least I can do, literally.